How's it going, film and TV fans? Welcome back to another review here on the Off the Cuff Film Reviews channel, and it's more of a retrospective than it is a review, because at today, on the 30th of September 2022, marks the 1 year anniversary of No Time to Die's UK release. The 25th film in the James Bond franchise came out officially 1 year ago, and it's been quite the year since then. It's been an interesting, time for the franchise, for the film. Obviously, having been a year on, there are a lot of, differences in opinions and stuff, and, it's time to look back on, the experience that was the build-up to the release of the 25th film in the franchise. And, in all honesty, a year ago, all of us were still thinking that, it might not have been out even now, And the thing is, the story of this movie starts all the way back in 2019. All the delays because of COVID never helped, and then obviously the movie finally coming out in September of 2021 in the United Kingdom, before releasing on October 8th, 2021 in the United States and America, and coming to DVD and Blu-ray before year's end. Now, I picked up the DVD, the Blu-ray, the 4K, and the Steelbook. I picked up everything. I was really hyped for this movie. It was my most hyped movie of 2021, being a massive Bond fan. I also have the No Time to Die, the Billie Eilish single on vinyl. I have the soundtrack on vinyl twice, including a coloured variant. I also have the picture disc vinyl, the CD, and the cassette. So it's safe to say I kind of like this film. Well, I cared at least enough to put quite a significant sum of money towards the movie. Not to mention, I saw it, I think it was 8 times in the cinema. So, it was an important movie for me as a Bond fan. But not only as a Bond fan, but as someone who had been, at that point, a Bond fan for 9 years, now 10 years. But had seen change in my own personal life towards film as itself. I saw Skyfall 10 years ago, and I'm going to be doing a video looking back on both Skyfall and Spectre at the end of October, when their anniversaries come up. Especially, obviously, specifically more so Skyfall, but also Spectre at the same time, because 7 years, 10 years. But when I saw Skyfall, I was 9 years old, so I wasn't actually old enough to watch the movie. And that was in Brighton. When I saw Spectre, I was a little bit older. I was 12, so I was the right age to watch the movie then. But it's important to know, I'd like to mention, is that when I came out of Spectre, I thought it was the best movie I'd ever seen in my entire life. The greatest movie ever. This is the best thing in the world, because it was a Bond movie, and I was hyped for it. And I had all the trailers, and it was a midnight screening, and I saw my tennis coach there, and I got a poster and everything. And it was... Spectre's still a good movie, and I actually think Spectre's a better movie than this movie. But that's a different story for a completely different time. And the whole thing, for me personally, is that in between the gap that was the 6-year gap between Spectre and No Time to Die, I became a film student. I started studying film at GCSE level in 2019, and it became my college course in 2020. So, over a year before No Time to Die come out, I had started the proper study of film, and to understand the film as a, the complex elements to it and all that stuff, and learning about how film was made, how it's produced, and how to make it and stuff like that. And my opinions of films have changed, between those two films, and specifically between the start of my film studies and the release of No Time to Die. I was seeing many more films at the cinema. I was critiquing a lot more films. In that time, I started this YouTube channel. So, having come out of Spectre thinking it was the best movie of the year, I knew that I was not going to feel the same way coming out of No Time to Die, because of how my stance with film itself had changed. And I think that reflects in my review of the movie that I made last year, which is about 40 minutes long, give or take. And as such, I wasn't disappointed at the time when I saw the movie. I thought it was a solid enough film. I actually did really love it when I saw it for the first time. But in all honesty, looking back at it a year on, the hype was there. I would rewatch the trailers all the time. I'd edit the trailer music myself to listen to. I was excited for the soundtrack. I'm pre-ordering a few bits to do with it. I'd love to listen to, and that's one of the best parts of the movie, I think, is Hans Zimmer's score. It is pretty fucking good. But I think when you go back to watch the movie, it's very obvious there are some scenes cut out, there's some storylines not resolved. There are issues with the movie. Don't get me wrong, it looks brilliant visually, but it has some serious story issues. It has some issues with character, and it has some issues with side. I think now looking back on it that it really sidelined Safin to make room for the ending. Basically, like Safin would have been a much bigger, better villain because he was being built up to be a pretty substantial villain, you know, being able to tear Bond's family apart and stuff like that. But he was sidelined so Bond could. It's been a year, so if you haven't seen the movie, this is your fault. This is one actually it's not. But again, I won't say it just yet, just in case. But you know, we're about 5 minutes in anyway. Spoilers for the film, obviously. But in all honesty, it's an experience I look back on as a whole, all the experience of anticipating the release of the 25th film in the franchise and following everything from that very first look we got all the way back in 2019 to the cast announcement and the actual announcement of the film in Jamaica, you know, all the way through to the first teasers, the first trailers. I remember where I was when the first trailer dropped, and I'm going to go, here's another story tangent, which is what this video is about. I remember the day before the trailer dropped, they dropped the teaser for the trailer, which is this. It was about 10 seconds. It was literally 10 seconds, and it already made me hyped enough to see the trailer. It was literally 10 seconds, and it would send trailer arrives tomorrow, and this was on Wednesday. This was on I think it was on a Monday, perhaps. They dropped this. So for those 2 days, I would just be watching that little teaser clip over and over again in my bedroom, my TV downstairs. I was just waiting for the trailer. But we didn't know what time it was dropping, so I went into because at this point this was 2019, so. This was December of 2019, if I'm not correct. If I'm correct, yeah, it was December of 2019, which is mad to think that long ago, you know. And I remember, you know, going into class that day, all my and remembering, you know, telling all my friends that gave a shit that the trailer was dropping, we didn't know when it was dropping, and we for the day, I think we had our midday break, we were all like, well, it could be dropping at any time, and then we then went into our next lesson. For me, that lesson, in fact for all of us, I think it was science. So I went into the science lesson, and I had my phone under the table while we were doing science work, constantly refreshing the YouTube tab to see when it dropped, and then it did drop, and I watched it, and the first time I ever watched the first trailer for No Time to Die was without audio. It was just visuals, and from that moment I think I was, you know, dead set on seeing this movie, in all honesty. And you know, from that point onwards, it was news all the time. It was constant production updates, news updates. The movie had, I think it was still filming in 2019, and I think it was pretty much, you know, there was the biggest piece of news that I followed with the film personally was, I think it was in January of 2020 actually. So this was 4 months before the film was scheduled to come out. Filming had wrapped and it was in post-production. And made the announcement that Dan Roma, who was originally set to be the composer for the film, who had composed for Carrie J. Futanaga's other films in the past, had left the project and was no longer composing the score for the film. And this was 4 months before the film was supposed to come out. So, you know, they were left in a position of, you know, not having a composer, and when you have such a short deadline, who do you call? Hans Zimmer. And obviously he had he managed to do it in the 4 month gap between January and April of 2020, so he managed to squish it in and do it to the best of his ability. Little did he know that he didn't have to rush it, because, you know, I think it was 2-3 months later, I think it was a month or so before the film came out. I don't think it was originally supposed to come out, I can't remember when it was, but it was not that long before the film was supposed to come out. It was announced that it was being delayed, so, you know, everything had stayed in limbo, but it was very obvious that everything was produced for that point in time, because when you look at the copyright year for the you know, when you look at the packaging for most of, you know, like the actual DVD, well, maybe not the DVDs and Blu-rays, but for instance the soundtrack CD, and also on Spotify it says copyright 2020. So it's obviously the only one I know in terms of the physical releases regarding the soundtrack that wasn't done in 2020 was actually the pressing for the cassette, because when you look at the cassette it actually says copyright 2021. So obviously that was an afterthought, but a nice one because it works quite well. But yeah, clearly everything was done and ready for that point, or that point in time, April of 2020, and then it all just got pushed back. And you know, every single time the movie got pushed back, I remember the statements that they were made about it would get shorter and shorter. You know, the first one was like, Michael G. Wilson by Broccoli sadly announced the movie being pushed back, and then the next one was like, you know, we are very sad to announce the movie being pushed back yet again. And then by the final time it was pushed back to October 2021, they just tweeted out a new poster, and it just said "No Time to Die, October 2021." They obviously didn't give a shit anymore. They just literally didn't care enough, or they were just getting pissed off at the fact amount of times they had to delay the film. So they literally just put a poster out, and it said October 2021 on the bottom of it, and the caption for the tweet read "No Time to Die, October 2021." And this was probably what, late 2020. So we were all getting, in fact, I fucking think it was actually October 2020. They announced it was being delayed to October 2021, you know. And then it was announced, I think, in the middle of 2021, you know, I think it was June or July, that in the United Kingdom, the movie's release date was actually being brought forward a few days, from October 8th to September 30th, which actually, when I read that announcement, I was excited because it meant that it would release, albeit on the final day, but in the day of my month of birth. And I actually remember where I was when I found out it got delayed again. I was at a Quick Fit. My mum was getting her car fixed, and I was just scrolling through Twitter and stuff, and then all of a sudden it came up, No Time to Die, delayed again or some shit. So that's fun. But you know, the whole build up to the movie was something I will never forget. Not only because obviously so many delays, there's so many trailers, and there are 4 fucking trailers for this movie. The first trailer, which came out in October of 2019. The second trailer, which dropped, I believe in some point in 2020. I bloody can't remember. Let's have a look, shall we? And then and there was you know, you had the second trailer, which dropped on the 3rd of September 2020, and then you had the final US and final UK trailers, which dropped, I believe, on like the bloody hell, it was like the 31st of September. But another moment that I very vividly remember from the life cycle of No Time to Die was actually the announcement of the name. Now I know at the time this was announced, I was actually in Spain at the moment. At that time it was announced, where the title of No Time, at the time it was called Official Title Reveal of Bond 25, and it was just literally a simple announcement of Craig walking across some letters, and then it just said No Time to Die. And I think there was a moment, you know, I think a lot of fans had speculated that from the title that maybe he wasn't going to make it for the film. So, you know, from the very announcement of the movie, and I do like the name. I've always loved the name of the film. I think it's a brilliant name. But the movie itself is still a weird one to me. In all honesty, I think it's going to grow on me a lot more as time goes on. But obviously, having been a year, I saw it in the cinema 8 times. I wrote an in-depth review on Letterboxd about it. I reviewed it on the channel. I made compilations about it. I used to put the TV spots up all the time. You know, it was a big thing for me in my own personal life, that, you know, the hype towards the movie and seeing it as many times as I did. And it's not even that seeing it that many times, you know, something on my own. It was with lots of different people, and it was nice to see each different people's reactions to the film. And looking back on it now, I still think it's still a good movie. It's still a very watchable movie, but I think it struggles with pacing. It struggles with script issues. It clearly struggles with the story as well, which just falls flat on its face in some parts. It crawls to a screeching halt at certain points. Craig's Bond acts really differently here than in the other films, and I can say that with confidence because, you know, at the time of recording of this video, you know, as it being the 60th anniversary of the franchise, they have been showing all 25 films on the big screen, and actually next week on James Bond Day, that whole season of Bond will conclude with a showing of this movie. But I've recently seen Spectre, Skyfall, Quantum and Casino all on the big screen, and he acts very differently. And having rewatched No Time to Die today, he acts very differently in that than he does in he acts very differently in No Time to Die than he does in the others. And something about No Time to Die feels a bit off. Like, the visuals are beautiful, but they seem, I don't know what it is. The costume design is a bit interesting as well. I always thought Sam Mendes' visual style really worked better for Bond than I think Kanagal's did. And it's not to the discretion, it's not down to the cinematographer, because Linus Snugwin is a really talented cinematographer. Obviously Van Hoytema, who did Spectre, is, I think, a more talented cinematographer, and even Roger Deakins before him on Skyfall, incredible talents in it, and it was going to be a tough uphill battle for Linus, but he did the best with what he was given. And even though some of the trailers were just, they felt soulless, really. Like, the music in some of the trailers, while it was good, it was nowhere near the tier of Bond trailer music we've seen in the past, in all honesty. You know, the trailer music for, like, Spectre and Skyfall and Casino Royale, Quantum of Solace, brilliant trailer music. Even some of the older Bond films had brilliant trailer music. You know, like, Dawn of the Day used the Oakenfold song, Dawn of the Dice used the Moby song, I think. You know, the GoldenEye trailer is fucking awesome, you know. But they didn't have it here. It just had some... Every single trailer, it was a variation of the Bond film at the end as a build-up in different ways. And I think it definitely was something that Hans Zimmer noticed composing the score, because there's certain elements of the score where it's just dun 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 dun, like, which sounds like trailer music. But if there was one positive I can point out with this film, it is genuinely Hans Zimmer's soundtrack, because it's brilliant. And also Billie Eilish's title song, while it's definitely not one of my favourites, it's still a pretty good one. I do think, when looking back at the Craig era, which is another video I want to do quite soon, he has had some ups and some downs, but for the most part, you know, Daniel Craig's Bond holds a special place in my heart for being the first Bond I saw on the big screen, for being the Bond that I essentially grew up with, albeit, you know, it being, you know, the last 10 years and not the last however many he's been doing it for. That's why. But it feels weird to say that it's been 1 year since No Time to Die released, because I still have on my wall, right behind where this I'm recording this from, big posters that say No Time to Die April 2020. And that's another thing I want to talk about. The posters for this movie were atrocious. They were like, the first poster was Daniel Craig stood against a fucking blue rock wall. Like, what the fuck was that shit? That was a terrible poster, and they just kept getting like kind of good. The best one was the one that I think they kind of realised what the best one was. It was the one that was used for a lot of the marketing material towards the end. It was Daniel Craig with a gun, white background, and then the 007 logo, because when you look at the stuff you can buy for the film, the soundtrack, literally the entire collection for this movie, you can buy all the stuff, it's that poster design. The CD, the vinyl, the picture disc vinyl also has that image on it. The cassette, all of the DVD releases and stuff used that poster and that poster design. So they knew which was their best one, and they saved that one for last, because most of the other ones were fucking shocking. And then there were other variations of stuff, which there was a variated one that I think is the thumbnail for this video. Well, it's basically just all of the character posters airbrushed together and neatly stuck together to look like it was one, but it wasn't. And you could tell that they'd all been cut out and pasted. Like, not terribly, but you could tell they'd been cut out and pasted, because they were all looking at directly, you know, at the person, you know, like instead of it being less obvious. So that was an issue I had. The posters and the marketing for this movie were not the best at all. And obviously, I think it's worth mentioning that around the time the movie came out, or not, it might have been this year, I can't remember, but during the life cycle of this movie, during the year, MGM was bought out by Amazon, and as such, No Time to Die is currently streaming on Amazon Prime Video, and it's the only one from currently streaming. However, there was a period during this year where every one film from Doctor No all the way through to No Time to Die, including the unofficial Casino Royale and Never Say Never Again, were streaming all on Amazon Prime, and that was a glorious time to be a Prime member, and I really hope they do that again, because it would be really nice to have Bond have a permanent streaming home. I do know that Casino Royale, Quantum of Solace, Skyfall and Spectre are all streaming on Netflix in selected countries. However, United Kingdom is not one of those countries, so we're going to have to settle for just No Time to Die on streaming, and have to whip out the Blu-ray box set whenever I want to watch the others. But MGM being bought out by Amazon is a big thing. It means, evidently it's going to have an effect on how Bond is produced, and it is going to also mean that Jeff Bezos has, albeit limited, amount of control of how Bond is made, how Bond is produced, and now it means, you can have spin-off, well, we like to hope there can be spin-off TV series, which, everyone's rooting for one based on a character I will talk about in just a second. I'll talk about characters as well, but, TV show spin-offs would be really nice, but they're already doing some reality TV show spin-off, which is kind of cool. But it just begs the question, what's the future for Bond? We already know something is coming on the 5th of October because the official Ian Fleming account teaser is going to be a big announcement. It could be a new book, but I'd like to hope that maybe in honor of the 60th anniversary they would announce who the next 007 is, because you never know. They said they're searching for it, so anyway, that's a different subject for a completely different video. What we want to talk about now is distribution, movie distribution, and the distribution of the Bond films through studios. Now, as you know, MGM distributed at least the Craig films, and maybe a bit before that, but I don't 100% know, but they distributed the Craig films. What we're talking about here, the Craig films, which is why this is important. The Craig films, they distribute the films in the United States of America and most other territories. There are some exceptions to that, as we'll talk about, but in the biggest territory, which is the United Kingdom, MGM just don't distribute anything. Like, they don't have, they don't distribute stuff in this country. It's usually dished out to, mostly it's dished out to different studios, but the main one is a studio called EFD, Entertainment Film Distributors. They distribute a lot of MGM movies. They did Dog, they did Big Engine Longing, various different, movies. I can't remember who did House of Gucci. It might have been EFD, but I don't know. So EFD usually distribute a lot of MGM movies. However, Bond being Bond, before this film, Casino Royale, Quantum of Solace and Skyfall were all distributed by Sony Pictures in other territory. I think including United States or even at some point, but anyway, they had international distribution. Sony had international distribution. This time around, the contract with Sony expired with Spectre, and it was one of the things that Sony lost in that big calamity fuck up that was around the time of the famous Sony hack. They lost quite a lot of stuff, and it wasn't a hack that caused them to lose Bond, but the contract expired and they just didn't want to renew it. So when the distribution rights went up for auction for No Time to Die, several studios put in a bid. I believe Warner Brothers, I think, put a bid in. Sony bid again, but they were unsuccessful. I know Universal obviously put a bid in too. A few other studios jumped in. I think A24, fuck knows why, put the finger in. Lionsgate put the finger in the pie as well, I think. And I think STX also put a bid in, but they were not, STX are not exactly the studio you go for that kind of thing. So it doesn't surprise me they lost the bid, or came nowhere fucking near it. And ultimately, it was Universal that won the bid. So No Time to Die was distributed by Universal. And I'd like to think that in some regards, depending on the studio, trailers can reflect which studio is distributing them. Warner Brothers has quite good trailers with good trailer music. Universal does not. So So I think it can affect how a trailer is produced depending on the studio. It can also affect how the marketing is made for a movie, and it's that I can feel is quite evident with No Time to Die, as well, the posters and stuff for a lot of the other Craig movies were not the best. Skyfall had some nice ones. Spectre had some pretty lackluster ones, I will admit. But, you know, Sitting Around, Quantum of Solace had some good ones. Skyfall had some good ones. And the trailer for those movies were really good. But No Time to Die's were lacking in that area. Quite a lot, I think. And that's very evident. Now we're going to move on to characters and how they are used in the film. Obviously, we have 007, the main focus of the film, James Bond, who isn't 007 for a considerable chunk of the movie. Because at the start he's retired and shit. We have Madeline Swan, who is just as useless as she was in Spectre, if not fucking more. I hate her. Nothing against Léa Seydoux, because she's a very talented woman. She's really good in. There's this new movie she's got out called Crimes of the Future. It's nothing against her, because she's a very good actress, but she's just given nothing in the script at all, and it's very obvious she's trying her best while she's given, but her character is so flat and one-dimensional that there is just literally most of the time she's just screaming. So she's not a good Bond character, and it's definitely not the actress's fault, because she's trying with what she's given. Now, secondary characters, we have Nomi, the new 007, not James Bond, but the new person to get given the 007 codename after Bond leaves the Secret Service and shit. Yeah, there's a few characters. We've got Nomi. She's not the worst. She's not as bad as everyone thought she was going to be, but she's definitely not the best character, Bond character we've ever had. She's a bit sleazy. She's a bit cocky. She's a bit not the best character. Moving swiftly on, we have the MI6 regulars. We have M, aka Mallory, Moneypenny, Q, and Tanner. Who all Q is really funny in this movie. I won't lie. Q has always been good. He's always been well done. But here, I think he has the best moments in the film. I think that he has some really funny lines and some really funny moments. And I've always thought Ben Whishaw was really good Q. He was really good in Spectre. He was pretty decent in Skyfall, and he's pretty good here as well. Moneypenny fares a little bit better, but a little bit worse at the same time. She is really sidelined, and she is barely in the movie at all. She's in like 3 or 4 scenes. The best scene she has is the one where her and Bond go to Q's apartment. That's it. But she is the most sidelined out of the 3. Then you have Tanner, who is also used sparingly, but because he's the right hand to M, you see him a bit more. Then you have M, who after not doing his job very well in Spectre, doesn't do his job very well here either. But I feel like M here is feels like he's being a bit like Bernard Lee's M again, who was in some regards a father figure to Bond, but in some regards a mean old boss, and it works both ways, I think, and it works pretty well. But he's again, you know, there's a lot of missed opportunity of what did you do, kind of, you know, like he did the thing, he did the bad. And he is wasted, as are most characters in this movie. Let's go on to move on to the bad guys. We have Christoph Waltz back as Ernst Stavro Blofeld. Pretty fucking useless, I won't lie. Waltz is a talented actor. He's once again wasted in this movie. And he just dies. It's just like they're cleaning house in this movie because Felix dies, he dies, and Bond dies. So they just clear house. That's another Bond we're going to mention in a minute. Felix, we'll get to that in a second. But fucking, he's useless. Christoph Waltz is too talented to be doing this shit. Like, he was a waste. He was the most wasted person in the movie because he gets like 2-3 minutes screen time, then he fucking gets killed by Bond, and then no one cares anymore. So, you know, just as the movie didn't, I'm gonna move on. Cool. I mean, in all honesty, the scene where Blofeld's birthday party, cool concept, epic Michael G. Wilson cameo, but it was just not pulled off very well. Next up, we have Primo, the villain with the fucking eye thing, who is just fucking shit. Like, the actor's not even that bad. He seems like a genuinely nice guy because I've seen some interviews, and he seems like he was very happy to be in a Bond film. But the character was just fucking generic as fucking fuck. Like, useless. Like, it was sort of like a gimmicky thing with the eye. He fucked up. He's also left in the open. You know, one thing that always confused me about seeing this movie, the amount of times I did, is that when Spectre all dies from the gas thing, why the fuck doesn't he? Because he's clearly a member of Spectre. Like, clearly he has the Spectre stuff. Like, sure, it's because he works with Safin as well. But that was a little bit of a BS plot point. But I suppose the answer is he with Safin, so he clean. But he's a useless character, and he shouldn't be even here. A fucking doctor. Let's move on to the doctor. He's not really a bad guy, but he also is at the same time. He is literally boring AF, like, genuinely. I don't understand why he's in the movie. He is used for a few scenes to get things across, but Dr. Valdo Obachev, I don't fucking know. He's just really boring, and he's also a racist. Because there's a line towards the end of the movie where he goes, "I could exterminate your entire race off of the face of the earth," and he says that was Nomi. So, you know, racism. Yeah, he's a bullshit character. He was really stupid, waste, fucking bad. Also, Hugh Dennis in this movie for literally 5 fucking seconds, whatever. Cool, don't care. Moving on. Logan Ash and Billy Magnussen is a good actor. He was really good in The People vs. O.J. Simpson. That's all I've seen him in, but he's good in that. And he's even quite good in here, but he's just basic betrayal character, and he feels very much like it was very obvious from the start he was a double agent. And it was a cliche that's been done too many times in the Bond films before, and it was rubbish. And he's a rubbish character, and the only good moment is when he dies and he says, "Oh, can you help me, brother?" And then Bond goes, "I had a brother. His name was Felix Leiter," and then he kills him. That's the best moment he has in the movie, because it's genuine revenge, not because he's dead, but because it's genuine revenge, and I like that. We're going to talk about Felix Leiter. Now, Felix Leiter is a character who's appeared in numerous Bond films in the past. Numerous Bond films, quite a few. All the way down to being in the first Bond film. You know, he's in a lot of Bond films. You know, he's in quite a few of them. In all honesty, and you know, he was in, you know, in Dr. No, Goldfinger, Thunderball, Diamonds Are Forever, Live and Let Die, The Living Daylights, License to Kill, Casino Royale, Quantum of Solace, and of course No Time to Die. So he was also in the 1954 version of Casino Royale, and he was also in the 1967 one, I think, as well. And he was also in, you know, he wasn't in the 67 Casino Royale, but he was in Never Say Never Again. Anyway, the point is, he's been portrayed by numerous actors. Jeffrey Wright is one of those actors. Jeffrey Wright first portrayed him in Casino Royale, which he was brilliant. He then portrayed him again in Quantum of Solace, where he was not the best. But, you know, okay. And he didn't return in Skyfall or Spectre, although Felix Leiter's name was mentioned in Spectre, and then he comes back here. In honesty, us the fans were excited to see Jeffrey Wright come back as Felix Leiter, but if we all knew he was going to die, then maybe we didn't want that to happen, because actually I think a lot of people would want Jeffrey Wright to return as Felix Leiter again in another Bond movie, because that would be fucking awesome, and I would be one of those people who would be behind that shit. So, you know, he is again wasted in this movie, as quite a few characters are, but he has some nice moments of Bond, and he genuinely has moments in this movie where they feel like they would hang out between work, you know, they would hang out after work, you know? They don't feel like two people who work together and that's it, like they have no chemistry. They have friendship and it works so well, and that's one of the things I can applaud about the movie, is having the short but sweet friendship between these two people feel real. Now, we're going to talk about the biggest pile of BS this movie has to throw at you, and that's Rami Malek as Lucifer Safin. Now, when I say Safin is a criminally underused villain, I mean that with every fucking cell in my body, because there is so much potential here, because Rami Malek is an incredibly talented actor, and if you were to tell me 10 years ago that he would be a Bond villain, you know what I mean, if you were to tell me that information, I would be, you know, blown away, because he is an incredible actor, and he is pretty good in the film. He's very good in the film, but he is wasted. He is sidelined at the very end, and I've said it earlier, so I'm going to go into the spoilers now. He is sidelined at the end, so the main focus is Bond's death. You could have had the movie be perfect and have a much better battle between him and Safin that lasted longer, but he is killed off with a fucking gunshot wound. Like, seriously, this was one of my biggest gripes of the movie when it came out, and I tell you why that is, because most Bond villains go out with a big bombastic death, you know. Kananga was blown up, Goldfinger was sucked out of a plane, you know. Scaramanga was shot, but he was shot in a really cool way where Roger Moore pretends to be the figure of himself. Max Oren falls off of the Golden Gate Bridge. Fran Sanchez is set on fire. You know, Alec Trevelyan gets crushed by a satellite. Elliot Carver gets destroyed by the sea drill. The really nice cold kill of Electric King in The World Is Not Enough, when Renard gets stabbed through the thing with the thingy. Gustav Graves gets, you know, destroyed by an air turbine. Le Chiffre and that lot, you know, Le Chiffre was shot, and that worked for that movie, and he was shot in a good way, it worked. Dominic Green died of exhaustion, which was pretty extreme. Silver was stabbed in the back by Bond, quite literally, so I rate that one, you know. Most of the Bond villains have over-the-top bombastic deaths. Safin is literally like, it's not even like, Bond has killed and shot villains before in the past, you know. Like I said, Electric King, Dr. Kaufman, he's killed them, and he's killed them with pizzazz, and, you know, like, with the Kaufman one, that's one of my favourite kills in the whole franchise. With the Electric King one, it's a cold-blooded, straight-shot murder where Brosnan clearly, you know, he's doing it properly, and he goes, "I never miss" afterwards, so it works. But here, literally, Bond just picks up the gun after, like, literally, you see in the scene, Bond looks at that he's been, you know, covered in the poison, looks sad, picks the gun up and just fucking shoots Safin and walks away. That's the end of it. Like, he shoots him a couple of times and that's it. Like, doesn't care, doesn't give a fuck, doesn't give a shit. He's just shot and that, and then we move on. You know, it's just like, it's a waste of potential, it's a waste of a talented actor on the movie, and it's a wasted death. Like, if he died in a more over the top death, I'm gonna be a little more forgiving at this point. But he was shot. All the trailers hyped him up to be the big fucking overlord who would change the world, and then to have that all come down to him just being shot in the gut by Bond as Bond walks away and heroically dies himself is a bit bullshit. I won't lie. Let's talk action sequences, because there are a few in this movie. They're decently done. The car chases work. The cars in this movie, there's too many, because you've got the DB5, you've got the V8 Vantage, you have the Superleggera, you see the Valkyrie in the background of a shot, a few shots. He drives the fucking Land Rover Defender as well. You know, there's a lot of cars in this movie, and a lot of them are sidelined because, in all honesty, the DB5 is going to be in every Bond film. That's a given. That's not a problem. But to bring back the Dalton Daylight's car and just fucking have him park it, and that's literally it. It's like, just put him in the DB5. You don't need to bring back one of the most loved cars from one of the most loved actors and just let him park it. Like, what the fuck is the point in doing that? Like, seriously, it was just a bullshit moment to appeal to the fans, and that's sad. It is really cool that the DB5 has like machine Gatling guns now. That's fucking sick, and that whole entire square escape sequence is fucking awesome. And I will not hear, like, the way he spins the car. They've made it into a fucking post. It was that sick. But yeah, the action sequences, they work. They're nice. But in all honesty, if you wanted someone action heavy to direct this movie, direct the Bond movie, David Leitch. Give him the director's chair. Let him direct the next one. Fucking please. Anyway, I've already talked music, but I'm going to talk about a bit more in depth here. Hans Zimmer's score is wonderful. It's one of the best parts of the movie. It's not one of the best Bond scores, but it is definitely one of the best parts of this movie. It works so well, and the one thing, while I'm not always the biggest fan of Hans Zimmer, I'm very vocal about this. I think he can be very generic, and he can be very much just using other people to ghostwrite his music, and Steven Zaza is a great example. Even on this film, he's had other people do it, although there are films, although I will give him credit, he did do a lot of it himself on this one, but he got other people to help him too, like even, like, you see the interviews, and he sat there with Steven Zaza and Johnny Marr. So he's not hiding away with it, even though on the album it's just him getting credit. He is, obviously stated very much. Bizarro was at the premiere, so was Johnny Marr. So he's not hiding that secret. It's just how the services work, I think, really. As he is the main composer, and the other guys just help with additional music legally. So that's how that works. But that's not my issue here. That's not what I think he's a bit generic, and he can, But here I think he cared, because getting given a Bond movie is a big thing for a composer, and while he's already big enough to have taken everything before him, he paid his respects to the musical style of Bond. He obviously has a lot of admiration, at least it's obvious from the score, for Bond's musical past, because he uses not only obviously the Bond film, but he does something that no other composer has done to date, since or before. And that is bringing back a previous piece of themed music from a previous film that's not title song, and that's not like the James Bond theme, and actually using it in a different film. Because he brought back, not only did he brought back We Have All the Time in the World and incorporate it into the Materis track that you hear before, he also did the best thing in the world by incorporating one of the best pieces of James Bond music, On Her Majesty's Secret Service by John Barry, into the score for this movie, and it's beautiful. I remember the moment I heard it, because there was a leaked version, not leaked, but kind of like, there's this site that puts up early previews of movie scores. They compile like a few bits of it together, put it up, and there was one for this film. I was listening to it, and I haven't heard We Have All the Time yet in it, but there were, because it wasn't in the preview, but there was also, like, the guy had released that whole track beforehand, so that's sick. But I'd heard it just transitioned into from that into the Majesty's Secret Service bit, and I heard it, and I just literally had to put my phone down. I dropped my phone, because it's brilliant, and I give Hans Zimmer that bringing back the Majesty's Secret Service theme is fantastic. If any of the composers were going to do that, I would have put my money on David Arnold, in all honesty, because he's fucking awesome, and he is a very, very known fan of John Barry and his music. So I would put my money on that. But hey, I would love to see David Arnold come back. I'd love to see Newman come back, because Thomas Newman is a better composer than Hans Zimmer, and I will fight you on that. No disrespect to Zimmer, because he is brilliant, and he's done some great stuff. When he does it himself, which is basically any Christopher Nolan movie, and also Doom, because he did that one himself, and he won a fucking Oscar for it, even though I don't think it deserves it, in my opinion. Anyway, away from that, the music's brilliant. Let's talk about the title song, Billie Eilish's title song. Now, obviously, title songs over the years have been interesting. I am honestly getting sick of these lovey-dovey ballads. The last three have been them. They're all good songs, but I want a You Know My Name kind of song, and I'm yourself, because that kind of awesome upbeat pop song while it worked for that film, I would love to see that star come back in the next Bond film and get someone. This is why I wanted Dua Lipa to do the Bond 25 song and give it a whole pop, kind of more, that kind of feel. I liked Another Way to Die as much as people really hate that song. I think it's actually alright. Shoot me, I don't care. And obviously, My Name Is awesome. And I kind of want that kind of style of Bond song back. But that doesn't mean this isn't a good song, because it is. She's a talented artist. She's got a very husky style voice, and I can really understand how the lyrics work. The song is very well written, and it's obviously orchestrated and stuff by Hans Zimmer. And another thing that this movie brings back that hasn't really been done since, I'm going to say Casino Royale because I know it was done there, but in all honesty, probably word is not enough, but Casino Royale technically, and that's actually incorporate the title song into the actual score of the movie for more than once, because it doesn't count for Spectre because that was a listed instrumental and it wasn't in a separate score track, whereas here there is no listed instrumental, A, and B, it is directly incorporated into other elements of the score, and even though it's not present in the film, there is also orchestral sessions that prove it was even more incorporated into the score than we actually heard in the film, which made me very, very happy. It's very nice to see a tradition of a Bond tradition being brought back by someone who obviously admires and respects Bond's musical past, which is something I really do respect Hans Zimmer for being able to do. And yeah, it goes out saying, please do listen to the soundtrack because it is brilliant. This has been a big chunky video, and in all honesty, this is what I've been looking forward to doing, because it's it's a time to celebrate this film, but it's also a time to look back on some of its missteps, which there's a few. Now we're going to talk about the most controversial. Before we jump into the controversial moment, I just want to talk about the actual, not the song, the actual, well, obviously the song's part of it, but the actual title sequence per se, Daniel Kleinman's title sequence, because it's wonderful. It's one of the best. It starts with the dots from Dr. No, and that's already a beautiful start to it, and it has some genuinely great visuals. And I just wanted to say that it's awesome. But now we're going to talk about the most controversial moment of the movie, perhaps the part of the movie that people remember the most, for right or for wrong. And I think it's the part of the movie that made a lot of people upset with the Craig era. And I know I've seen it reflected myself on some Instagram accounts that say, post like Sean Connery is James Bond, George Lazenby is James Bond, Roger Moore is James Bond, Timothy Dalton is James Bond, Pierce Brosnan is James Bond, Daniel Craig isn't James Bond, and sort of like hating on his character because he died in this movie, and saying that just because he died in this movie, none of his other movies, James Bond movies, he's a pussy. No, that doesn't devalue the fact that Casino Royale was one of the best Bond movies ever made, and is so incredibly faithful to the book. It doesn't denote the fact that fucking Skyfall is a goddamn masterpiece and harkens back to some of the most classic Bond films of being a Bond v villain kind of thing. No, it doesn't do that. It doesn't take away from the fact Spectre is actually a really good film and really quite fun. Fuck you. That's not what it means at all. It doesn't mean Daniel Craig has never been James Bond and never will be James Bond because he died. That's not how it works. That's not how it was meant to portray it. That's not how Barbara Broccoli, Michael G. Wilson thought. That wasn't the thought process behind killing Bond off. Killing Bond off here was obviously just because Daniel Craig could not leave the role if the character didn't die. That's what my defense was when I saw this movie, and it's still my defense at one point now. As much as I don't like the ending, and I think for me it doesn't work, I'm not going to sit here and say just because it doesn't work doesn't mean it can't. Doesn't mean it's not a good ending, or doesn't mean that Daniel Craig is the bad Bond. I think killing Bond off could have been done far better. On paper, it's a pretty good concept, but it needs to be executed well, and it wasn't executed well enough, in my humble opinion. And I think, in all honesty, if someone were to sit down and tell me, listen, we're going to kill Bond off, what do you think? I would say to them, I am down for this idea. I think this is a good idea, but it has to be done right. He can't die for some stupid BS reason, and he can't die you know, it has to work. And here, he gets poisoned and just dies. Like, he's not sacrificing himself for anyone else because the missile's already coming down. There's no, don't bullshit me by saying he stayed on there to sacrifice himself to keep them. No, the doors were open already. The thing was gonna fucking explode whether the doors were open or not. It doesn't fucking matter. He could have left. He just decided to stay there and be a hero. And that's my biggest problem with the ending. I don't have a problem with the fact he died. I have a problem with the fact he died in such a stupid fucking way. Which is why I can't really sympathise with these people that say he's not Bond. But I can also he's not Bond, but I can sympathise with them when they say that he died in a bad way in this movie, because that's true. It was a terrible way to end it. You know, it was a terrible way to kill him off. It's not a terrible way to end the movie, but in my opinion, it could have been done so much better. He could have actually sacrificed himself in a much better way. Sure, Hans Zimmer's music is still fairly fucking good, if not a little ear screeching, but it's the fact that, you know, the whole idea of, obviously he has a kid with Madeline now, and it is his kid, it's confirmed by the end of the movie, but the whole idea that he's going to kill himself because he can't touch the kid, of all the reasons why James Bond would die, I would not put my money on because he can't touch someone. Sure, I get it, I do get it, the whole family thing, but he is still James Bond, and the only way I could see him die was to sacrifice himself for king and country. That is how James Bond would die in the books. That is how James Fleming would write James Bond's death. Even though you get what I mean. That is how Bond should die. Sacrificing himself for queen and country, to keep the queen and country alive, to end the villain. Not because he can't touch his child. I do understand why that's where the filmmakers went, but it's kind of sounding a bit hypocritical. I'm not even that mad at the ending. I just think it could have been done so much better, and it was a little bit of a disappointment at the same time. And in all honesty, it was a very disappointing end to an era of Bond that has had so many highs and not even that many lows, in all honesty, because Quantum isn't even that bad, and Spectre is actually a really good movie. And in all honesty, I think this is my least favourite Daniel Craig Bond film. It is between this and Quantum of Solace. I do think Spectre is a better movie than this, personally. If I were to rank the Daniel Craig Bond movies, it's Skyfall right at the very top, for personal reasons. Skyfall at the very top, Casino Royale in second place. We have Spectre in third, No Time to Die in fourth, Quantum of Solace in fifth at the moment. However, that could very much change in the future. Anyway, it's been a wild run for this movie. And while it's definitely not my favourite Bond film, and there are definitely some things it could improve on, it still doesn't mean I didn't have a fucking blast seeing it at the cinema. It still doesn't mean I didn't love every minute of it. It still doesn't mean I don't think it has some great moments in it. It doesn't mean that it's a bad film. It's just weak. And in all honesty, I think giving it the 3-hour runtime was definitely an issue. Okay? And it had production issues. It had, you know, so much go wrong, and, you know, to come out as pretty good as it was after 6 years, you know, ultimately I was a little bit disappointed with this movie. And it's not because usually when there's a 6-year gap between films, the last time it happened, it went from fucking masterpiece to a fucking masterpiece, whereas here it's gone from pretty good to not exactly the best, you know? Because the only other time there's been a 6-year gap between films was between 1989's License to Kill and 1995's GoldenEye. Yeah. And it very much reflects on the fact that it was not very high up on my top movies of 2021. It was quite low. But that doesn't mean I didn't enjoy the movie. I still think it's a fine movie. It's a pretty good James Bond movie. And I would still recommend it to everyone to go and watch it. I had great fun with it. Thank you so much for watching my review of No Time to Die. It's been a wild ride. You know, being a Bond fan has been so much fun. You know, it's had its up and downs, being a Bond fan for 10 plus years now. And while obviously I have more personal love and affection for movies, for Skyfall and Spectre personally, that's obviously circumstantial. And hey, in years to come, I may even have those same feelings towards this movie. It takes time, it always does. It really, really does. And this is not me saying my opinion on this movie will never change, because that's not true. People's opinions on movies change all the time. There's no such thing as a perfect movie, and there never will be. Sure, it has its issues, it has its problems, but it's still a solid movie, and I would highly recommend you please give it a watch, as it's now streaming on Amazon Prime Video. Thanks so much for watching this 56 minute, this hour long look back at the life cycle of No Time to Die, 1 year after its release. It's been such an honour to follow this movie closely than anyone else on the platform, really. You know, it's been a wild ride since, you know, 2019, the title announcement, you know, all the way through to the DVD release. It's been a fun one. I hope it's a lot less messy next time. But ultimately, I was not satisfied with the conclusion of this era of Bond. I look forward to the future of Bond, and I do say with open arms that Daniel Craig has been a fantastic Bond. He has really shown the human side to this character, and albeit he becomes basically superhuman in No Time to Die, beside that, you know, I still love the title. I think No Time to Die is a really good name, I won't lie. Thank you so much for watching my look back at No Time to Die 1 year later. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I really hope you go back and check the film out. James Bond Day is on the 5th of October, which is when No Time to Die is showing again at the cinema. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you very soon for some more reviews, hopefully this weekend. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Bye bye for now.